Hear me out. Pokémon are mutants. A far-fetched claim, I know, but when you look at the facts, it all kinda starts to make sense. Here's a quick rundown on Marvel mutants. They're supposedly the next step in human evolution, but if you go back far enough, you'll see that they were actually created as an offshoot of humanity when the universal space gods known as Celestials messed with the DNA of our ape ancestors. Or, if you prefer a more recent retelling, one of these Celestials got toasted and puked on our planet, giving birth to all life, and, conveniently, providing an explanation for the superpowered tendency of humanity. The main attribute of a mutant is their X gene, which is usually activated during puberty while experiencing extreme stress or trauma. A sufficient amount of radiation can also trigger an X gene, hence the moniker Children of the Atom. While there are far more mutants in the present day, the past is littered with them. Specifically, an ancient branch of extraordinarily powerful, immortal mutants known as externals. Mutation itself is a gamble, and each individual mutant has different strengths and abilities. At the same time, many mutants develop similar abilities and appearances. Mutants also have the ability to develop new powers called secondary mutations. Again, this is caused by stress, trauma, and exposure to radiation or any other form of exotic energy source, which the Marvel Universe is chock full of. Now, let's take a look at Pokémon. Pokémon are an incredibly diverse group of creatures with many different physical attributes and a variety of incredible abilities. They've been around since seemingly the beginning. They were originally created by Arceus. One of the two. You can pick. I always used to say Arceus. Apparently, the correct pronunciation is Arceus, but you know what? I'm just gonna go whatever comes to my brain when I say it, I'll say it. So, Arceus, Arceus, whatever. Anyway, they were created by that guy, the God Pokémon, who brought the legendary Pokémon with domain over universal forces into existence. From them came the world, and from the world came Pokémon. Pokémon had the unique ability to evolve. After maturing and experiencing a sufficient amount of battles, or from another point of view, stress and trauma, Pokémon can transform into stronger versions of themselves, usually changing physically and developing more powerful abilities. Pokémon can also evolve by spending time in different environments or by being exposed to different items. Some of these items give off a sort of radiation that empowers Pokémon far beyond their initial abilities. Do you see where I'm going with this? Both mutants and Pokémon have the ability to evolve. This is of course known, but what I'm getting at is that their method of evolution is incredibly similar, by growing stronger in the face of conflict. Not convinced?
I'm not impressed.
Well, here's a few other scraps of evidence that might tickle your fancy. Both mutants and Pokémon were seeded by a higher cosmic power, the Celestials and Arceus, whatever, respectively. Both mutants and Pokémon have legendary members of their species with superior powers, extended longevity, and, in the past, were worshipped as gods. Both mutants and Pokémon have types. Yep, that's right. You may know about Pokémon types, well, mutants have them too. These come in the form of mutant subspecies that share abilities and appearances. You've got the Chayaraphim, aka Flying/Fairy type, the Neaphim, aka Dark type, the Lupine, aka Normal type, the Homo Insectus, aka Bug type, and the Psychics, a name that speaks for itself. In addition, you've got the unnamed similar superpower groups that resemble Pokémon types, like Fire, Electric, Fighting, Water, and Steel. You can even get mutants that have dual typing. There's also a prevailing theory in-universe that eventually mutants will start to evolve in a way that they will develop very similar abilities, which will cause them to branch off to form tribes based on their shared characteristics. If you ask me, that sounds strikingly similar to types. Both mutants and Pokémon have a common ancestor. In Pokémon lore, Mew is said to share DNA with heaps of Pokémon and be a sort of progenitor figure. Not the be-all end-all source of all Pokémon, but responsible for the dissemination of a large portion. Sound like anyone familiar in the X-Men universe?
Crash against me and be broken!
That's right, Big Daddy Apocalypse, the rocks on the eternal shore who built mutant civilizations and birthed its strongest residents. Both mutants and Pokémon can come about through other means. There are plenty of Pokémon that didn't develop naturally on the planet. Some were artificially created, others came from beyond the stars. Well, the same is true for mutants. There are mutants that are artificial organisms, mutants from outer space, and hell, mutants that are both. And they are all considered part of Homo superior. Whew! Wow! That's a lot of evidence. But if you're still feeling skeptical, I've got one last smoking gun. Humans can become Pokémon. There is a slew of stories across the canon that tell of human beings transforming into Pokémon. Lombre, Iron Hands, Hitmonchan, Ninetales, and a whole host of ghost types. In Pokédex entries or supplementary lore, it is said that there are instances of human beings transformed into these Pokémon. In fact, there is an entire side game series based on the premise of a human transforming into a Pokémon. And might I add, they are some of my favorite Pokémon games. I will never stop shilling Mystery Dungeon. I need a new one. Nintendo, if you're listening, please, I'm begging you, give us a new Mystery Dungeon on the Switch. Or, hell, just give it to us on the new one. I don't care. I need my fix. Anyway, even if you take all that away, the most important piece of evidence I have is the Pokémon Emerald Pokédex entry for Kadabra. It states, "It is rumored that a boy with psychic abilities suddenly transformed into a Kadabra while he was assisting research into extrasensory powers." This same story is reiterated years later in Pokémon Sun. Its Pokédex entry states, "A theory exists that this Pokémon was a young boy who couldn't control his psychic powers and ended up transformed into this Pokémon." I don't know about you, but that sounds like a secondary mutation to me. On top of all of that, in Sinnoh there are tales of when humans and Pokémon lived as equals, and, according to the lines that were omitted in the English localization of Diamond, Pearl and Platinum, even got married. The exact quote from the English language version is, "There once were humans and Pokémon that ate together at the same table. It was a time when there existed no difference to distinguish the two." Or, if you want the more literal Japanese version, the line specifically states that this was a normal thing because long ago, people and Pokémon were the same. So, to wrap it all up in a neat little bow, once upon a time in the Pokémon world, humans lived alongside a species that was the same as them, with the only difference being their extraordinary abilities and varying physical appearances. Differences that were perhaps encoded by a celestial being. Take away the word Pokémon, and that exact paragraph can be used to describe mutants. Now, the question remains, what happened between this point and the present-day Pokémon universe? Who knows? Maybe the humans created Poké-Sentinels and forcefully enslaved the Pokémon out of fear of them becoming the dominant life form. There's no shortage of alternate universes in the Marvel multiverse where mutants are turned into a slave race and their powers are used in the service of humanity. But that's just a little bout of speculation. What isn't is the truth that I have laid before you. Pokémon are mutants, and mutants are Pokémon. All that the Pokémon need now is a superhero team to fight for and against a world that, well, not quite hates and fears them, but definitely doesn't respect their sapience. Also, this is a tangent, but Mewtwo is totally Magneto. There are so many similarities that I genuinely think that Mewtwo's entire character in the first movie was inspired by Mags. And I guess with a little bit of Wolverine tossed in, because God forbid anything be related to the X-Men without Logan lingering in the background. Hey there! Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to watch more. I've got a lot more like this one around here somewhere. Oh, look, there they are. Go ahead, click them. Oh, and while you're at it, why not subscribe? I'd appreciate the support. Anyway, that's it from me. Farewell folks, and have a good one.